All right. Welcome to Bold Voices for W. My name is Khadija Halaru, and my guest today is Oluwaseun Dele Ige, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
All right. So we're coming at you from Oxford County. You're in Woodstock, I'm in Ingersoll, and we're just reflecting over the disappointing news. We don't know what to call it, whether it's disappointing or exciting, because I know there are two factions in the country right now.
Mm,
Trudeau's resignation, key lessons for Canada. And for me, in this episode, I want us to unpack the lessons that the resignation and its impact on issues are, kind of bringing to fore. For me, balancing public opinion on issues like immigration, talking
mm,
inflation. I would include the war on Gaza, even the war in Ukraine, international trade, and all these issues that have happened in the sense that tariffs are coming, a new president is coming, all just came to a head. And I think for the first time in Canadian politics, we can say there's not just one issue. And no matter who's going to come into this, it's just going to be it's so complex. It's not one issue that we have to deal with. So joining me to talk about this for me is so we can share deep insight into what we at our levels understand, because our community needs to be engaged, need to stay engaged enough to understand the political landscape, so that when we make informed decisions, we're sure what we're doing. At this point, over the last 9 years, ignorance is not bliss anymore. You
yeah.
cannot you cannot claim you do not know what any party stands for. You can't claim to say you don't know what the position of the ruling party is or the other party is, which is why we're seeing such a stiffness in the change that is about to happen. One party has its grip in office and they've been pushing their agenda so well that now we know them so well they can't not say that that's not their agenda. And then we have the other party who is so like ready and hungry, and we also know their agenda. So then there's this
Mm.
hesitation and this, real resistance that is making it seem like, wow, I thought you had this strong mandate, but no, we're seeing how difficult it is to just tackle. And then honestly, having Trudeau show such strength in the public opinion that has shifted in the last 1 year, having Trudeau just show the strength of a leader when it came to having internal voices. And I imagine those internal voices, they started over a year ago, where people started to feel like, you know what, it's not going anywhere. The immigration is causing a lot of problems. People were just blaming everything on the immigrant. And I felt like there was no immediate answer to clarity, until it became too late. And then all of a sudden, he decides to change policy when it comes to immigration. And then inflation, all of us just talking nonstop about it and the effect it's having, and even calling out the spending we're doing overseas when it comes to wars. Canada has never been a war country. We've always been a peacemaker. We train peacekeeping forces. We are peacemakers everywhere. So there was a lot of clashes even within our traditional role on the world stage that really just woke up all these factions. Like there's 101 opinions now. It's not just a whole block of three. It is a really diverse landscape of frustration, concern, uncertainty, and all of that. So what do you make of that in a nutshell?
I think, like you said, public opinion is key at this stage because public opinion is just like that mirror and magnifying lens for a leader. And one thing that shapes this is when trust has been eroded because of repeated scrutiny, over time, based on, you've said it, probably because of policies, because of the way leadership have handled things, because of all this mirage of issues, trust and credibility is just out of the way. And that is where you begin to see leaders now being subjected to all kinds of attack, even if they are making policies that are beneficial to people because of this repeated, critique and every other things. Everybody is blinded to any policy or decision that is being made that will benefit people at the time because trust has
Yeah.
already been. And I think that is where Trudeau finds himself, between the rock and the hard place at the
Yeah.
stage.
But I think he's caused it because, like when you forget to understand the people you serve at every stage in the game, you want to understand the people that you're serving. Understand what is their loudest cry. At that moment in time, you deal with that cry. When you
Absolutely.
let that cry linger for too long, another issue comes up, and that's another cry. And then all of a sudden, like, you have all these cries and you
It's
don't know which
piling
one
up.
to solve. And then you hit one major button, and then that button that you decide to hit steps on a lot of toes again. And then people just feel like, you know what, you run out of ideas, you gotta go. And so
I think that was exactly what happened to him at this stage. It was just a pile up of issues on top of each other. Decisions that were made or delayed decisions as
yeah.
well. Because when a leader begin to see the trajectory of things, quick decision, quick to be able to be flexible and fix things based on the yearnings of people. Like you said, you need to understand the people you're leading. You need to understand the temperament. You need to understand the temperature of the room. You need to be aware and to be alive. Unfortunately, when it comes to party politics, also within the party, there's competing interest. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that I find himself also, because now at this stage, you don't even know who is for you or who is against you. Because the people that you might call your trusted ally within the same party, you know. So those are the
So I think
dynamics and the shift in power,
I
balance
think
of
that's
power.
what where it went wrong, because you can, yes, Nene is here. So welcome, welcome. We're joined by Nene Akinton, our next co-host, to discuss issues in the Canadian landscape. We're here talking bold voices for W. Nene, welcome to the show. Oh, it's still coming on.
Oh, okay. All right. Welcome, Nene, if you join us.
Yeah, she's loading. She's loading. All right, so we're talking about, hello, Nene. Welcome to Bold Voices for W.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Awesome. So we were just basically breaking down the whole idea that you have to understand the people that you serve. When in politics, you kind of delay focusing on their issues. Say people think about, the people they serve in terms of, oh, they voted for me and this was their issue. But we always hear that, people, we know what people want. Sometimes as a politician, you say you know what they want, but do you really understand what makes them tick? Like, what is that one thing you're going to do that's going to tip them off, even though you were focusing on what you thought they needed? And what we came to understand in this situation, where we had so many, so many issues at once. You had immigration, you had housing, you had, even the wars. Like I said, people were already protesting our spending and inflation. And then we have the whole tariff and the crisis of whether you're even strong enough to meet up with another president who supposedly we should have confidence in because you've dealt with them before. But for some reason, you were positioned as weak in this situation where before we showed our strength. And I think with all those intersectionalities coming together, there was just a really difficult landscape for him. And Sheo and I were just talking about how sometimes when you leave a problem to linger on for too long, and then another problem comes, and then you're trying to deal with another problem, and then all of a sudden we have all these problems. And for the first time in Canadian politics, you really have a whole cluster of problems that I feel like no matter what party comes in, this is a huge deal to tackle. So, Nene, what's your take on all of this as you kind of reflect on this resignation?
This resignation, I wasn't surprised though that he resigned, especially after the finance minister resigned, especially because she's such an ally, a strong ally, or she has been. And to your point, the media also, I worry about the media sometimes because it becomes a case of the court of public opinion, like you're saying, right? People make up their minds based on what they see in the media, which is similar to what we are seeing in America. But there's a lot of problems we have. There's I don't want to use the word recession, but a lot of economies all across the world are suffering. It's not just in Canada.
Yes.
So I don't know that there's a magic pill. I don't know that the next person who's coming in, regardless of party, is going to be able to sort this out. But I guess it's a wait and see game.
I think what really happens in politics is where there's a crossroads. So you have a government who has been a savior, let's put it that way, maybe in the beginning, and then they showed their strength and they brought more progressive ideas that they were able to stand behind and made strides in that. And then you come to a point where regardless of how good you are, regardless of what your intentions are, regardless, you have those silent voices that have always tolerated a situation or tolerated a prime minister or a president, whatever it is. And when then public opinion starts to shift in those silent voices and the way that it's going, I was shocked in the last 2 weeks how many people that were so loyal turned around so fast. And then this is also a testament to the power of women in politics, where you had a woman who stood beside you as a vice or a deputy, and for 1 year, she was able to hold on. She was able to help you hold on because this whole shift in public opinion started a year ago. It started a year ago in the summer of 2023 when people were already saying immigrants are too many and there's no accommodation, housing was going up, interest rates were going up, people were just blaming the immigrant for everything. And I felt, you know what? We didn't deal with that enough to quell, the voices of those who felt like the policies were already out of whack. And when it became too late and he came and he just halted the policies in the middle of students being in school, counseling, visas and counseling work permits, that definitely stepped on a lot of toes. Because if we have a nation built on immigration, you cannot pick and choose when immigration suits you. We use the monies that these people brought as students to help usher up the economy. Schools will tell you right now that without them, they are bankrupt. And you know that in our statistics, we know we need immigrants. We know we need. Why is it that it's at this stage of the game where immigrants are more the visible minority that we choose to blame immigration? Housing has always been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
No one wanted to focus on the fact that we're spending so much money for the first time, shifting our global policies from peacekeeping missions to fighting wars. That's a lot of money that the central bank was just printing, money that we didn't have. And so I want our communities to really understand politics deeper than just what they say on media, like you said. The pundits are just always talking about, what Trudeau has been, what he hasn't been, what prime ministers prior have been, and who's expected to be able to do this or do that. I will tell you, as someone who is trying to see everything objectively right now, I am so proud of the way this man has handled his dignity and his leadership. Because if it was someone else, a politician in another situation with this whole 1 year, knowing that people are against you, even internally before it came out, he should have fallen a long time ago.
Mhm.
But there was a woman beside him. And that woman was the one that broke the camel's back. Because as soon as I remember the day watching Trudeau announce the tax thing, I could see Christy Freeland's face going, she had this smile. And then she just kept shaking her head like, wow, you really want to do me like this? Because she just promised the nation she was going to try to reduce the deficit. She was trying to balance her books. She was doing all she can. And this is where leadership has to respect individual strengths and weaknesses, where if you have someone who's strong enough to make you look good, just keep them and shut up and let them make you look good. You don't override because desperation comes in. And I think that's where we got the clarity that there was an internal strife. So I don't know where we're going to go from here, but we hear about what people want and we know we understand what people need, but it's about knowing what makes them tick. And when you actually just hit the nail on your own coffin. And this is what this is about. So let's talk about now what the oppositions are talking about. What do you see?
Yeah, what are they
Yeah.
saying? Like, what are they saying? Because I don't even know.
So the
I
opposition,
think
yeah,
before we even go to the opposition,
yeah,
one thing I quickly want to just bring about is that, you know, people, you can look using the United Kingdom as an example, right?
Mm.
It is easier for whoever that is an outsider to say whatsoever they want to say until they get in and the reality is in their face. That is when, they begin to sing another song. Yeah, the Labour Party were all over the place in the UK saying the Conservatives weren't doing things right. They wanted to come in. And now that they are in, all the things that they said they were going to do, they are going against it. And people are really crying. I mean, these are the things that we also need to, in Canada, we need to borrow leaf from before we make decisions going to the polls emotionally based on the current reality. And this can also now flow into what you're saying concerning the opposition party.
And I like that, because what we have seen the Prime Minister display again in his wisdom is the strength to hold the country together again for a short while, to cool the temperature, which is what he's just done by proroguing Parliament. And that means Parliament will continue as normal till March. And he will still be there until we have a new leader for the Liberal Party. Now, if you notice Poilievre's statement, he was just deflated, because at the end of the day, he somewhat used the campaigning of last summer to push it into coming back in September and just asking for the government to fall, And that's why I look back and I say this government was really strong to have stood the test of time for a year, even almost over a year, because this call has been growing since. That was what led into the summer of last year, where Poilievre really got steam and just was doing his bit, really almost campaigning to go take over the government when he went back. And after 3 defeats for that motion, you can see the strength in this Prime Minister, and then coming back and realizing that Canadians need time. He needs to cool the temperature. People need to take time to think. Because again, when you're a strong leader, you're thinking about what's in the best interest for your nation and whether this other party is even well equipped, because you're in it and you can see the people who want to take over your job, and you can tell whether, are you really sure you can handle this? At the same time, it might be that you prefer your party, but it's about reality, like you said. It's about knowing what you're doing right now and what effort you're putting in and all the work you're doing. Continuity of government means you're not just going to resign and leave the room and go home. You have to hold on to some things, and you have to put things in place. Currently, the government is only funded till about March 31st. There's no other budget after March 31st. Who's going to put it together? When we have no prime minister, deputy prime minister, we have no prime minister, we have a finance minister now who's maybe looking confused, wondering what he should do. And we're actually talking about the guy just leaving the reins and going home. No, he has to buy us time to fix the situation, to even perhaps meet Trump on his first day with the officials in place, and maybe have a new leader that can understand the whole complexity of this before he hands over. And I think that's what our people need to understand. That's what Canadians need to understand. And unfortunately, in his mind, he has done the best he has done for Canada, but we're at a crossroads where desperation kind of just showed up and people are not happy. But it doesn't mean that the policies are a detriment to all of us. Mistakes have been made, and he has acknowledged some mistakes. But then again, we need to also be open-minded to change. And we need to be open-minded to the possibility of even a new candidate within the party making inroads and actually holding on to government. So let's see how that goes. But Nanette, if you feel like that has helped you gain a little bit of an understanding, what do you now kind of see overall?
Confusion. Confusion. But I like what you're saying, though. And I also like what Shion said. People seem to think that, they can do it better. But really and truly, they can't. I mean, we have examples, like you said, in the UK, even in Nigeria.
Exactly.
We have the same thing. They're like, okay, but they're there now, and they're seeing the real issue. So he's done a good job up to a point, but he made mistakes, like you said. So all I know is they need to reduce my taxes.
And you know that's the Canadian problem.
It's 40-something%. No, it's just so discouraging. You don't want to work because you don't want to work and then give 40-something%. Like, why?
Exactly.
And then they made it difficult for you to, have a way of legally, not parking your money, but legally giving your money to, with the whole dividend thing.
Yeah.
They changed it and all. I mean, of course, some people misused it, but I'm just a small business owner, right?
Yeah.
And these taxes are crazy.
It's really biting. It's biting Canadians. And that is one thing I said about not listening and understanding the people you serve. Because one policy could be a blanket policy, but it affects people differently.
Yeah.
You know, and I think at this point, the resignation has just raised more questions about accountability, trust, and the responsibility of leaders. Because if you really understand that when you make a change, it's not only affecting that one thing that you want to change, you have to listen to the people you serve. When students started going on the streets in Toronto and Montreal and protesting as international students, so many Canadians felt they didn't have the right to do so. And I felt so, confused because I felt, wow, it is the way that we have positioned our government and our ways that we've positioned each other that will point a finger at those people who have pretty much brought their whole life savings to come shore up this country. And until we as a nation begin to appreciate the ways that the government survives, because the same Poilievre, like you said, who's saying he's going to cut immigration, everybody's going to go back, and everybody's going to, he's deporting people. Half of them are going to lose all the staff that even serve them in their homes and their babysitters and their cleaners and everybody who are students who are surviving based on those little jobs that are available to them.
They won't do that because I'll give you an example of real estate. When they started with this foreign buyers, blah, 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 they came up with that rule. Mm-hmm. But there are loopholes in the rules because they are benefiting from it. So the optics, it looks good. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is you can still circumvent those rules. So yes, he may try to, reduce immigration and all. But to your point, all the workers that all the people that do the jobs that they don't want to do or Canadians don't want to do would have to go back home. And I was shocked to find out that even our public schools charge international foreign students. I think they charge them $20,000 or something like that. Yeah. I was shocked.
Yes, they do.
So they're making a lot of money too. So I don't know, all this. Anyway.
See, the thing is, when we talk about, and I'm going to say it up front, we're talking both voices for W, and we're going to be honest with each other. When it comes to discrimination and superiority complex, this is what is ruling the nation right now. We talk about the diversity of this country and immigration and the enrichment that immigration brings. It brings all this beauty in the summers. Everybody wants to be happy to see different foods and cultures and languages and, celebrations. But then when it comes to shoring up that person who's come and supporting them, whether they've come through refugee crisis or whether they've come through their own hard-earned money, selling assets and buying a PR, let me call it buying, because that's what it almost seems like to be. And they come here with expectations and they can't feel those expectations and they're riding on the minimum and they're struggling to survive. And then because they're willing to do anything, you're like, oh, you guys work so hard, or people work so hard, or, and then they're the first you call out again when you feel the system isn't working. I'm like, do you understand what these people are doing for our nation, that we're not paying all these taxes because of them? You just talked about 40% taxes. If we didn't have immigrants coming here like a funnel, and within a year, everybody's paying taxes and people are retiring at the same time, can Canadians honestly tell me that we would be able to sustain this country if we didn't have immigration? Or are we talking about a specific people that are immigrants that is a problem? Because we have to accept whether we either want immigration or we don't want immigration. For us to slam immigration, I think was single-handedly one of the things that brought this government down. Because you have a lot of enemies when you do that. Shay, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think it's rather unfortunate that immigrants will always be a scapegoat when it comes to things like this. They are always the easy target that you can always point accusing fingers to, and other people will buy in. Let me say something about the power of media that shapes things. Because now you could see the media's going everywhere and talking to these immigrants. You switch off social media, is all about them, scapegoating them, forgetting what these guys really, really are contributing into this economy. I mean, the promise, the promise of a better life that is being said, yeah, okay, come to Canada, come and study, and you will integrate, even for the ones that came with PR, with good quality degree. Look at the bars that these guys have to go through before they can even get their own PR. And now they are within the system. You said you need more people who are highly skilled, but these skilled people that come in cannot even get the jobs.
No,
So
you can't now. The
so
whole Canadian work experience thing.
yes.
Yeah.
So
And that
look
is
at the
what the average
emotional,
white Canadian doesn't understand.
the
Yeah, they don't
emotional,
get
the
That
emotional
challenge.
torture, all the things that psychological torture, emotional torture, financial war without that these people really have to go through. And
The
one must
mental health
commend their
strain.
strength of resilience.
But
To,
having
yeah,
said that though,
yeah.
I will say that there are some people, some immigrants who are taking advantage of the system. Which is why, because I do a lot of community work and I see a lot of them who say, okay, they're coming from they're refugees, but then they're refugees, but then at the weekend they go home to a house where they live in. And I see that.
Nene, when you talk about in the grand scheme of things, if we bring in 1 million immigrants a year, the people that are just doing what you said are not even up to 100 or
That's true though. That's true.
So we cannot ever base
That's
it's almost like scapegoating everybody.
Yeah, there will always be,
Handful of people have
there will
done.
always be that little element
There
of
was
people that
always,
will, circumvent the system.
exactly.
You know,
But we have to remember, we're a nation of immigrants. It happened since the time of the Holocaust, when Jews came to this country, when nations were driven out of their homes. The Irish came to this country, the Dutch came to this country. Even in times of, South Africa came to this country. We saw the Bosnians and the Serbs when they come to this country. People in Syria, we just in the recent past 10 years, see Syrians, flee and come to this country. There was a time it was Lebanon during the Beirut War came to this country. But they have not necessarily integrated the African immigration, trend now into the system the way that others have been able to assimilate, which is the reason why it is so bold when people call out immigration is the problem, because it is embedded in that simple superiority complex. You seem like when it comes to the African immigrant that you're helping us. No, the African immigrant is perhaps one of the most educated of the whole lot that has been coming here through immigration. And that's what we need people to understand, that we deserve and we demand that respect. You do not point your fingers at immigrants just because the visible minority is what's ticking you off right now. Because the Indians and the Africans and the Asians are now visibly coming here, and you feel like it's taking over your life, but you forget even you were yourself an immigrant. So many of us are going back just 5 generations, great grandparents, great great grandparents, grandparents, your child. Guess what? We're all immigrants. So when you come to this country, except you're an indigenous person, we just happen to be coming later than your grandparents or ancestors came. But let's be honest and let's be factual about what we're seeing today.
That's
The
true.
fact that immigration is being made a scapegoat today is because it's mainly the visible minorities that you see.
That's true.
Threatening your existence, you're feeling like we're taking over. We're not even up to 10%.
Mm-hmm.
It's threatening to everyone, and which is what we need to call out, and which is why we need to say to every person that is a visible minority now to really take the reins and stand up for yourself. Go into politics, have a voice. When we talk about economic growth and innovation, because of the richness of our diversity, because we are all, having more ties back home as a later generation of immigrants, the country's still surviving on those networks, still surviving on the benefits of those trade and international, spirit corporations that we're doing in this day and age. We have trade commissioners in every country, except you have decent immigrants that are able to make those ties and even have the pulse in some countries for you to understand where you should be doing business and where you shouldn't. We won't have trade. So every normal Canadian, which is why we're doing this, we're speaking up, boldly to call out what is causing the misinformation and the disinformation, because the government isn't doing enough of it to educate people. You need to know what the immigrant means to Canada. We need immigrants. The statistics show that the birth rate is so low. Without us, without new people coming here, we cannot pay taxes so that you can retire. We cannot revolve round and round so that you can take that break. And you are not sitting in front of your TV, watching TV and saying the doctor has taken your job, or the physician has come to take your job, or the engineer has come to take your job. Even the PSWs that the government is begging for since COVID, 90% of them are still the African immigrants that are taking them up. You don't want to go do that job. So stop calling out the immigrant. The immigrant has not come to take your job. It has not stopped you from being creative to figure out how to get a job or create a small business. And yes, let's talk about small business. Without the immigrant, we wouldn't have Tim Hortons. We wouldn't have shawarma joints. We wouldn't have the diversity and the beauty and the customs that you so want to enjoy during the summers. So for one day today, as we reflect over Trudeau and how this government came down, let's be honest to every Canadian to say, you know what? I think it's time to stop blaming the immigrants and everything, because it just brought down this government. For some reason, even the cries to stop the wars, Gaza and Ukraine, immigrant scene policies, whether they're for or against, are also part of the hush hush that has been happening that also brought down this government. So you need to understand that immigrants can make it. Together, united, can make this government either stay or go. And we need to remember, again, just understanding the people that you serve. And I think it's just at this point, really annoying that immigration was a scapegoat, but you just see how badly that hurt this government.
Yeah, I mean, and in the real sense of things, the Canadian government or the Canadian environment has really benefited from immigration more than the way it was projected. They've really benefited, small businesses benefited, whatsoever the amount that immigration has cost. I mean, like Nene said, look at those schools, what they've benefited in terms of school fees that were paid within those periods. I mean, there was a whole expansion of the academics environment. When immigration was coming, you could see all those Conestogas, all these schools were just all over the places, getting money, making money, and they were really doing fine. And it is because of, the economy was there. Yeah, we know that probably because, once people were really coming in, things that needed to be done in terms of housing and stuff like that to really accommodate the volume of people coming in was not there, was not done at the pace which should have been done, which obviously backfired. But that does not really put the blame on the immigrants, because the
So
immigrants.
I'll tell you what Kitchener did. Kitchener just got a wonderful pat on the back. This whole call of housing, driving housing, and the provincial government really trying to help the federal government attain the housing targets. Kitchener just hit their target. And they got that so-called promise from Ford for the extra millions if they hit their target. So why did the city of Kitchener hit their target? Conestoga College, in the last 3-4 years, became one of the go-to places in Canada to come to school as an immigrant. Conestoga College single-handedly they actually wanted to fire their CEO the other day, taking advantage of the immigration system. Saw the opening, gave people easy access to come to Conestoga, and guess what? The whole world was coming to Conestoga College in Kitchener. Kitchener faced housing immediately and potentially saw that and were building and building and building. And just prior to COVID, when I would go to Kitchener and see all these lands that were for sale, they hit the ground running, building, trying to, accommodate students to the point where just that trend and projection allowed them to really take that risk to go for it. And now with the policies that they relaxed for builders and developers, they've achieved their target. They did not blame immigrants. They welcome immigrants. They capitalized on the immigration story, and they have done. So that's what the government should have done.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying. When you have a situation where you have a problem on your hands, focus on the solution, not on the problem. And this is where governments go wrong. And when you see a prime minister and a deputy, one trying to focus on the solution and one creating a new problem, basically, that's where we came to a head. So for anyone listening, I think hopefully you're getting some insights into how this political landscape doesn't always look as easy as it's talked about. the media will just talk about one talking point and leave you with something that is such, like a cliffhanger. And you're like, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. Everywhere I go, I'm going to use that as my talking point. No, it is deeper. And I think as immigrants, we need to really understand it so that when we choose leaders or when we fight for our causes, and in this dispensation, you can see how easy it is to influence politicians. The public opinion that rose through writing letters, whether it was through trying to get Canada to add their voice to ceasefire, or whether it was through the immigration story. I know locally people writing about the immigration and we need to stop. It definitely got to him. And we talk about all sorts of things when it came to Ukraine, how we should definitely change our policies and stand up and be someone who actually buys arms and give arms. I mean, that was a shift in our policies. It was all pressure. People can write letters and influence politicians. And that's why I need people to understand that you can truly, truly become a beacon of hope for your country when you understand policies better and you can actually act and rise up to actually represent, so that if you're feeling that Parliament isn't doing the job that you want them to do, get up, rise up, represent, be that extra voice, be that extra vote. But maybe at some point, we'll actually get things going in our favor. Maybe we'll celebrate immigration that it has been celebrated for so many years. Unfortunately, we have case scapegoats today, but and we're not taking away from any immigrant that is not from any of the visible minority countries, not going through discrimination. Or I know that people went through discrimination from different languages, and people went through from different accents, and people went through just by being specifically from a specific country. The Irish went through discrimination. People did have their own story of discrimination, but we need to call it out when it has gone to this level where the average Canadian is bold to say, you know what, they just kick this immigrants out, go back to where you come from. And that is something that I believe every visible minority needs to understand, the power that they have given this country, and not to allow themselves to be taken, lightly. So when you see them protesting, they have a right to protest. You just took all their money, you promised them an opportunity. They came to get the education so that they can assimilate with the Canadian experience that you want. And now we blame them. That to so many of us is an insult on top of the fact that you've already been injured, as we say. So yeah, I think if you have any closing arguments right now for why you think this government failed, do you think the opposition failed? What do you think? Summarize, Nene, if you have an idea. Hello?
I'm here trying to unmute. This is a very difficult topic because I liked Trudeau. I liked him a lot in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I liked him up until more recently, and I think I fell into the trap of the court of public opinion. So some of the things you've said here have kind of given me a shift in my thinking about how he's a strong leader and he held on for about a year, because at the end of the day, he's human. But the failure, I feel, is around some of the policies. So I don't have anything. I'm an immigrant myself, so I support immigration, and immigration is really the bedrock of a lot of what we do in Canada. Economy-wise, I mean, and there's a lot of diversity, which I think is important for our children, to be able to see people that look like them. But I think where we started to lose the plot was just the lack of, I would say, direction, because all of a sudden you're welcoming us as immigrants into the country. Next minute, you are saying, okay, international students, visas withdrawn in the middle of the school year.
Yeah.
So it became very chaotic.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what the plan was, and it didn't look like it was a well thought out plan. I think maybe he was responding to, pressure from people because of, what the court of public opinion was saying. So that's when I started to get a little bit concerned.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what he was doing. Like, okay, we come, then we come. And then because I'm in real estate, I see how difficult it is for people to get homes to rent. We need to put all these barriers. And I'm thinking, how would somebody have credit when they're just coming into the country? Some of them don't have jobs. They're coming here with their skill sets to brush it up and then be able to get a job. So, like, are you thinking this immigration policy thing through? That was my was like, because I see it and I see a lot of it. Of course, we deal with anti-minority racism, but that's another thing. And because it wasn't doing anything, I mean, not that they can really do. I think they could have put in some policies in place. So it just seemed chaotic to me. And with all of that, I mean, and then with the divorce, that was a distraction, or the separation, that was a distraction. So yeah, it kind of went downhill from there. For me, anyway.
Yeah. Shay, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking forward, I would think for Trudeau, lessons has been learned. And for the Liberal Party going forward, I think they've learned, I will hope that they've learned their lessons with this, and that necessary adjustment is going to be made by whoever is going to take off from Trudeau, in terms of the kind of policy that they will put in place so that they don't walk through the same trajectory that they've been going through at this stage, which they are only, no policy in place, only listening to outside voices. The approach is not well thought out, and those are the things that really, really backfired. And I think they can learn from other nations that have walked through the same challenges. And I only hope that they were able to bounce back, because what the people have interacted with, obviously they do want the Liberal Party to still be in place, most especially the immigration, dental care, all those things that people are really enjoying at this stage. I don't know what can happen if if other party comes in and there's a shift in that.
You just mentioned something. You and Nene talked about, Nene talked about knowing what immigrants are doing and how there's a loophole. And you talked about learning from the experience of what has just happened. And you know what's standing out to me? If you really understand the power of immigrants, put an immigrant as the immigration minister. As simple as that. If you put Nene, she understands the loopholes, she'll figure it out. So when we talk about representative government, representing the people that you serve, and when you understand what it means to put people in places where they understand the issues, the problem, that is the power of our immigration system. The last two immigration ministers rotating from that immigration portfolio almost like a playhouse, because nobody really understands what to do and how to tackle it, and then we just messed it up big time. No immigrant would have ever thought about just canceling visas midway. Do you know what it takes for people to get a visa? Do you know what it takes for people to get a work permit? Do you know how much we spend even in countries that they apply from to get that visa? You just cancel it in the middle of the wait that they've already had to wait. No immigrant who has gone through that will do that to somebody else. And that is myself, my friends, the power of representative government. Because when you're not there, nobody knows how to deal with you. And which is why I said this podcast, I hope, will reach those people who understand that, you know what, this is not a time to sit on the sidelines. This is a time to stand up, rise up, and go be that person who could probably end up with a table that can solve some of these problems because you understand them so well. And that is why when you talk about, learning from these lessons, I can only hope that one of the lessons is that they go out there to say, let's get more diverse people on, and let's understand the real problems of this nation better so that we can solve it one person at a time, one group at a time, one faction at a time. And I think, again, for me, if that's a lesson that is learned, then it would be a really positive lesson. But then let's not forget that without even the minority government support from the NDP, we wouldn't have gotten as many of our benefits that we have today. So that's another question. How many Canadians are willing to vote for a visible minority? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your engagement on this podcast today. And I hope that with this, maybe some people can think twice maybe. And I'll talk to you guys again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Khadija, for bringing us in. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.